My name is Janine Centeno, and I will be speaking about the United States Supreme Court reaction to Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal. During Roosevelt's presidency, he led the United States through the Great Depression and victory of World War II. He also greatly expanded the powers of the federal government through a series of programs and reforms known as the New Deal. He served from 1933 until his death in 1945, making him the only president to ever serve 4 terms. The Great Depression was a severe worldwide depression that started in 1929 and lasted until late 1930s. It began with a dramatic crash of the stock market on Black Thursday, which was on October 24, 1929, when 60 million shares of stocks were quickly sold by panicking investors who had lost faith in the American economy. Without the value of the stocks in place, the companies lost their value and could no longer afford business. Over the next several years, consumer spending and investment dropped, causing steep declines in industrial output and employment as failing companies laid off workers. By 1933, when the Great Depression reached its lowest point, some 15 million Americans were unemployed and nearly half the country's banks had failed. In Roosevelt's acceptance speech, he addressed the problems of the Depression by telling the American people, I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people. Based on the assumption that the power of the federal government was needed to get the country out of the Depression, the first days of Roosevelt administration saw the passage of banking reform laws, emergency relief programs, work relief programs, and agricultural programs. This New Deal was a series of programs and projects that aimed to restore prosperity to Americans. Roosevelt wanted to act swiftly to stabilize the economy and provide jobs and relief to those who were suffering. The alphabet agencies, also known as New Deal agencies, were the U.S. federal government agencies created as part of the New Deal of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Although the New Deal actually helped the United States overcome the Great Depression, there was some opposition to it. The Supreme Court took a stance from a legal viewpoint, and in 1935 it effectively declared the National Recovery Administration illegal. In total, 11 out of 16 of the alphabet laws were declared unconstitutional in cases heard by the Supreme Court. The argument they made was that Roosevelt had tried to impose the power of the federal government on state governments, which was unconstitutional. If a state deemed that there was a crisis in farming, then it had the right to tackle this crisis as laid down by the Constitution, but the federal government did not have the right to impose its decision onto states. The Three Musketeers was a nickname given to the three liberal members who supported the New Deal agenda. They were Justices Louis Brandeis, Benjamin N. Cardozo, and Harlan Fiske Stone, with Brandeis being the leader. The Three Musketeers regularly voted to uphold New Deal laws, finding them legitimate exercises of power under the Commerce Clause. They succeeded in upholding the Gold Classification Act of 1934, the Fair Labor Standards Act, the Tennessee Valley Authority, and Social Security. In the later two cases, they managed to get members of the Four Horsemen to vote with them. The Four Horsemen were Justices James Clark McReynolds, George Sutherland, Willis Van and Pierce Butler, who opposed the Three Musketeers. The Four Horsemen regularly voted to strike down the New Deal laws, with George Sutherland being their leader. They would usually win majorities by convincing Justice Owen Roberts to side with them. Sometimes, but less frequently, they could get Chief Charles Evans Hughes to side with them as well. These men believed firmly in the liberty of contract doctrine and were interested in stopping the revolution FDR had begun. Their actions were often deeply unpopular, and some communities hanged them in effigy, but they succeeded in overturning the National Industrial Recovery Act and Bituminous Coal Act, among others. Chief Justice Charles Evans and Owen J. Roberts controlled the balance between the two groups. Now here's a video of the New Deal all wrapped up in just 1 minute and 30 seconds.
The New Deal, or actually New Deal since there were two of them, represented a series of programs and policies implemented by Franklin Delano Roosevelt with the intention of combating the effects of the Great Depression, and the main goals can be referred to as the 3 R's. 1. Relief, as in giving direct aid to the poor and unemployed. 2. Recovery of the economy via job creation and jumpstarting demand. And 3. Reform, especially that of the financial system. This led to a lot of positive developments, such as 1. Many of the newly created alphabet soup of agencies actually worked. The PWA completed tens of thousands of heavyweight projects, the WPA became the top U.S. employer, the CCC planted billions of trees as well as built roughly 100,000 miles of infrastructure, and so on. 2. The charismatic FDR restored people's confidence in the quote-unquote system through his public interventions such as the famous fireside chats, as well as by reforming the financial system. 3. The most vulnerable citizens received a safety net, with the Social Security Act creating a national pension fund, as well as unemployment and accident insurance systems. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, however, because, for example, 1. On the 5th of April 1933, FDR forced everyone to turn in their gold coins, bullion, and certificates exceeding $100 at a fixed price of $20.67 per ounce, and in 1934, the gold price was increased to $35 per ounce. Let's just say that those who used to own gold weren't exactly thrilled. 2. Business owners viewed the New Deal as an unwanted state intrusion. 3. Tons of jobs were indeed created by the New Deal, but they were for the most part short-term jobs. Was the New Deal perfect? Nope, but it represented one of history's best examples of the state being willing to courageously try stuff and, yes, even think outside the box.
Now, how is this all related to the class? To Kill a Mockingbird was based in the time period when Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected President of the United States. Therefore, the people of Macomb suffered money problems brought on by the Great Depression. Atticus is paid in goods and services instead of money for his duties in court. When the stock market crashed, people resorted to using goods and services as currency. For example, in the story, Scout asks Mr. Cunningham why Mr. Cunningham pays Atticus with goods. Atticus said, because that's the only way he can pay me. He has no money. With Mr. Cunningham being a farmer, he had little to no money before the stock market crashed. Therefore, he has little money to support his family and let alone pay for legal help. Paying with goods and services were the only ways to pay Atticus. That would be all for today. Thank you.